Absolute darkness. Not the darkness of night where your eyes adjust to shadows, but suffocating blackness pressing down like the stone ceiling above your head. The air is so cold your breath fogs even in this underground cell. It's January 1484 inches Castile, and the dungeon walls weep with frozen condensation that forms ice patterns by morning. You smell old straw, mold, and something metallic dried blood. Your instincts tell you you're alone. You don't know if hours, days, or weeks have passed since they took you. In the Holy Office's winter prisons, time doesn't exist. There's only waiting in the cold that seeps into your bones and makes every position on the stone floor agony. Then you hear footsteps. Heavy boots on frozen flagstones, getting closer. Your heart slams against your ribs so hard you can feel it in your skull. You're a woman in 15th century Spain. Maybe a converted Jew, or just someone who angered the wrong neighbor. You've done nothing wrong. At least you believe that. But here, in the bowels of the Holy Office, innocence means nothing. Here, only confession matters. And winter is when the Inquisition's machinery of terror operates at peak efficiency. Because cold breaks people faster than heat ever could. The key turns. The oak door creaks open. Torchlight floods in. Blinding your darkness-adjusted eyes, two men stand there, faces expressionless as masks. They say nothing. They grab your arms you don't resist because you've learned resistance only brings more pain, and lead you through winding corridors where you hear muffled screams from other cells. A whimpering that ends abruptly. Then another door opens and you enter a brightly lit room. In the center stand instruments of wood and iron, pulleys, ropes, water jugs. At a table sits a man with a quill, ready to write. Another man in Dominican robes watches you. He doesn't smile. He doesn't shout. He asks, in a voice, calm as death itself, "Will you now tell the truth, daughter?" Welcome to the machinery of fear. When we think of the Spanish Inquisition, we imagine horror movie scenes, sadistic monks in dark hoods enjoying torture. But the historical reality we uncover in dusty archives of Madrid, Toledo, and the Vatican is far more terrifying. Because what we find isn't chaos and blood. It's bureaucracy. It's a system. And it used winter's cruelty as a weapon just as deliberately as it used the rack. We're diving deep into the processus de fide today, the trial records that meticulously documented what happened when women refused to say what inquisitors wanted to hear. We'll read the ink that still captures these women's screams. We'll understand this wasn't a story about religious zeal. This was about absolute control, breaking human will, and an institution that elevated terror to exact science. The Holy Office called itself a religious court. Historians call it history's first modern police state. And winter was its most reliable torturer. The system ran on secrecy el secreto. When you were arrested, you simply disappeared. Nobody could know where you were. Nobody could ask. And the cruelest part? You didn't know who accused you. Witness names were struck from protocols or blacked out. You fought shadows. Imagine being accused of not lighting fires on Saturdays, evidence of secret Judaism, or cutting fat from meat. Tiny domestic details became proof of heresy. And because the Inquisition financed itself through confiscated property of the condemned, every wealthy woman, every widow with inheritance became a potential target. This wasn't a religious court. This was an asset seizure machine greased with innocent blood. Let's reconstruct the process. It doesn't begin in the torture chamber. It begins in your own home on a freezing January night. Late. The city sleeps. A knock at the door. Not loud, but authoritative. When you open it, there stands the alguazil, the Inquisition's constable flanked by armed men and a notary. They don't storm in. They enter and immediately begin writing. The notary conducts the inventario de biens inventory of goods, while you stand there in your nightgown, shivering. Children pressed against you. They count your spoons. They note your bed sheets. They estimate your furniture's value. Why? Because the moment of your arrest, your entire property is sequestered to cover costs of your own trial and imprisonment. You pay for your own prison. You pay for the food they give you. You even pay for the ropes they'll later bind you with. They take you away. You can't say goodbye. Your family remains behind, often destitute because accounts are frozen. You're brought to the carcel secreta, the secret prison. Here begins the first phase of torture, and it leaves no physical scars. It's the torture of isolation and uncertainty in rooms so cold that ice forms on interior walls by February. Cells weren't always the damp holes we imagine. Sometimes they were ordinary rooms in confiscated houses. But the rules were brutal. Total silence. No outside contact. Winter amplified this torture exponentially. No heat. No blankets thick enough. The cold became a constant companion that prevented sleep, made wounds heal slower, and broke psychological resistance faster than any interrogator could. Inquisitors knew the human mind tears itself apart in frozen isolation. They let you wait weeks, sometimes months, in the January cold. They called it softening the soul. Archives record women who went mad in their cells, who began confessing to things they never did just to break the silence and maybe get moved to a warmer location. But the system had another layer of perfidy, the monitors. Often, another prisoner was placed in your freezing cell. A woman who seemed friendly, who offered to share body heat during the coldest nights, who asked why you were here. You trusted her. You whispered your innocence while huddling together for warmth. What you didn't know, she was a spy. Everything you said was reported to the Inquisitor the next morning. Your trust became a weapon against you, and winter desperation made you vulnerable. Then came the first hearing day. You're led into a hall. At a long table's head sit the Inquisitors. They seem calm, almost fatherly. They ask, "Do you know why you're here?" This is the trap. If you say no, you're classified as obstinate. If you try to guess, you might confess things they didn't even know about. They won't tell you the charges. They say, "Search your conscience." They want you to incriminate yourself. Imagine the psychological violence. You stand there, weakened by poor food and winter cold, and must argue against learned theologians and jurists without knowing the game's rules. Many women collapsed here. They confessed whatever Inquisitors wanted to hear, just to escape the pressure and maybe return to a heated cell. But what happened to those who stayed strong? To women who said, "I am a good Christian. I've done nothing." For these women, hell's door opened. When gentle persuasion methods failed, Inquisitors turned to el tormento. But understand this, torture wasn't an act of wild rage. It was a strictly regulated juridical process. That makes it more terrifying. There were rules, protocols, and always a doctor. The doctor's presence wasn't to ease pain. He was there to ensure you didn't die too quickly. He calculated your body's limits. Inquisitors wanted confessions, not martyrs. A dead heretic who hadn't confessed was a system failure. Look at a protocol, the voto de tormento. Inquisitors formally voted on whether torture should be applied. When the vote passed, you were led to the torture chamber, Camera de Tormento. There waited the executioner, the verdugo, often hooded head to toe, not from shame, but to prevent family revenge attacks. First, they just showed you the instruments in that freezing stone room. They explained in detail what each would do. They called this terrición, terrorization. Many women broke here. From imagination of pain alone? But if you still remained silent, if you still insisted on innocence, then the procedure began. Women were stripped. In an era of extreme modesty and religious shame, nakedness before strange men was psychological rape. They often left just a simple linen shift. There were 3 main methods Spanish Inquisition preferred. Each was designed to cause maximum pain without killing immediately or permanently mutilating, because bloodshed was forbidden. The first method was la garrucha, the pulley. Your hands were bound behind your back. A rope was attached to your wrists and fed through a ceiling pulley. Then the executioner pulled you up. Your arms were slowly wrenched backward and upward, against shoulder joint anatomy. You hung there, entire body weight on twisted arms, in a room so cold your muscles couldn't relax, even when you wanted them to. Then they dropped you, but not to the floor. They stopped the fall abruptly just before impact. The jerk dislocated shoulders. Pain was so explosive, so overwhelming, that many lost consciousness immediately.